Okay, let's jump in. History isn't always a slow crawl. Sometimes there's a single event, like a door slamming shut on one era and, kicking open the door to the next.
Exactly. And that's what we're looking at with the year 1453.
Mm.
We're talking about the fall of Constantinople, a city that has stood for more than 1,000 years.
And its fall wasn't just a city changing hands. It marks the end of the medieval world and really kicks off the age of exploration.
It's impossible to overstate. But to get why it was such a big deal, you have to understand the city itself. Three things made it seem impossible to capture: its location, its defenses, and, well, the sheer will of its people.
That's what we're diving into, how this one event, driven by genius and new tech, just completely rerouted history. And it all starts with geography.
It really does. Look, Constantinople is on a peninsula. It's surrounded by water on three sides. It's the perfect spot for defense.
A literal bridge between Europe and Asia. If you wanted to move goods or armies between the Mediterranean and the Black Sea, you had to pass Constantinople.
And that gave it immense power. It sits right on the Bosphorus strait. Think of it like being the toll booth for all the major trade routes. Spices, silk, grain, it all flowed past them.
So they were incredibly wealthy just from their location.
Phenomenally wealthy.
Yeah.
But that natural advantage was backed up by some serious engineering.
The Theodosian walls, these things were legendary, right? Not just one wall.
Not at all. It was a system. We're talking a triple-layer defense. First, a huge moat, then a low outer wall, and behind that, the main inner wall, which was about 40 feet high and incredibly thick.
And it stretched for miles across the only land approach to the city.
For 1,000 years, those walls had stopped everyone. By 1453, the Byzantine Empire was basically just this one city, but it was still this huge symbol of Christian power.
And the last remnant of the old Roman Empire, really.
That's the key. When Constantinople falls, that's the final end of a line that goes all the way back to Augustus Caesar. This is the second Rome. Its fall left a huge vacuum.
So if the city was basically a fortress, who was the guy who looked at 1,000 years of history and said, I'm going to be the one to break it?
That would be Sultan Mehmed II. He was the young ruler of the Ottoman Empire, and he was incredibly ambitious.
Just 21 years old, right. But he wasn't just some brute. He was brilliant. Spoke multiple languages, studied history, science, military strategy.
Obsessively. He planned this for years. And his logic was very clear. The Ottoman lands were in Europe and in Asia, and Constantinople was this big Christian city sitting right in the middle, splitting his empire.
So to truly unite his empire, he had to take it. It had to become his new capital.
Exactly. And his first move was all about logistics. Before he even brought his army, he built a massive fortress right on the Bosphorus called Rumeli Hisari.
That's brilliant. It's a blockade.
A total blockade. It meant no supply ships from Europe could get through to help the city. He isolated them first. Then, you just look at the numbers. He shows up with maybe 80,000 soldiers.
And the defenders had, what, 7,000?
Around 7,000. A mix of professional soldiers, mercenaries, and armed citizens. The odds were just crushing.
But still, even with 80,000 men, those walls should have held. He needed something new. A game changer.
And he had one. Gunpowder. This is the moment that modern artillery really arrives on the world stage and announces that stone walls are officially obsolete.
We're not talking about small cannons here. These were monsters.
True monsters. They were designed by a Hungarian engineer named Orban. Funnily enough, he'd offered his services to the Byzantines first, but they couldn't afford to pay him.
Oh, that's a tough bit of irony.
It is. So he went to Mehmed. And the biggest of these cannons, sometimes called the Great Bombard, was nearly 27 feet long. It had fired stone cannonballs that weighed over 1,200 pounds.
1,200 pounds? That's what, like a small car hitting the wall?
Pretty much. And it's a different kind of force. Catapults just kind of chip away. A cannonball like that delivers a focused punch that doesn't just damage the stone, it shatters the entire structure behind it.
The sound alone must have been terrifying. This constant day after day booming that just wears you down.
That was the whole point. It was psychological warfare. The defenders would spend all night trying to patch these massive holes in their ancient walls, completely exhausted, knowing the bombardment would just start again at dawn.
So the cannons are hammering the land walls, but the city had another defense, right? For its harbor.
Yes, the Golden Horn. The weaker sea walls were protected by a legendary defense. A massive iron chain stretched across the mouth of the harbor.
So the Ottoman Navy just couldn't get in.
They were totally blocked. They tried for weeks, but the chain held. This meant the Byzantines could put all their few defenders on the land walls where the real fight was.
Which brings us to maybe the most incredible part of this whole story. Mehmed's solution.
Pure strategic genius. He decided if his ships couldn't go through the water, they would go over the land.
Wait, you mean he literally dragged his navy over a hill?
That is exactly what he did. He ordered his men to build a road out of greased wooden logs, like a giant slip and slide, up and over the hill next to the harbor.
That's insane. How far was it?
Over a mile. And they did it in a single night. Thousands of men and animals dragging dozens of warships out of the water up a steep hill and sliding them down into the protected harbor behind the chain.
I can't even imagine what the defenders thought when they woke up the next morning.
It would have been pure shock and horror. Suddenly, the enemy fleet is inside your safe harbor. The city is completely surrounded.
It's a psychological gut punch. And a tactical nightmare. Now they have to spread their tiny army even thinner to defend miles of seawalls they thought were safe.
The noose was tightening. And inside the city, things were getting desperate. The blockade meant food was running out. People were starving, terrified.
But they didn't give up. The records show ordinary citizens, women, children, the elderly, were out there every night helping the soldiers repair the walls.
They knew what was at stake. And leading them was the last emperor, Constantine the 11th. He was offered a chance to escape, but he refused to abandon his city.
He's remembered as a real hero, isn't he?
Absolutely. He was out there every day inspecting the walls, encouraging the troops. He was determined to fight and die with his people.
So after weeks of this, Mehmed ordered the final assault, May 29th, 1453.
And the attack was brilliantly planned to wear the defenders out. He sent waves of his less experienced troops first, just to absorb arrows and tire out the defenders. Then, when they were exhausted, he sent in his best soldiers.
The Janissaries. His elite shock troops.
Fresh, highly trained, and fanatic. The defenders fought like heroes, but there were just too many breaches in the walls and not enough of them to hold every spot.
And then the breakthrough happens. There's some debate about exactly how, right?
Yeah, some sources say a small gate was accidentally left unlocked, letting the Janissaries pour in. Others say the cannons finally just blasted a hole so big it couldn't be defended. Either way, once they were inside, it was over.
And the emperor?
Constantine tore off his royal symbols and charged into the fighting. He was never seen again. He died with the Roman Empire.
The city falls, and the shockwave from that moment just radiates across the entire world.
It really does. And what Mehmed did next was just as important as the conquest. He rode into the city, turned the great church, the Hagia Sophia, into a mosque, and renamed the city Istanbul.
But he didn't just want to ruin, he wanted a thriving capital.
Exactly. He was a brilliant ruler. He invited people of all religions to come live and trade in Istanbul. And it quickly became this huge multicultural center of Islamic art, science, and commerce.
But the biggest effects actually happened far away, in Europe. Let's talk about the Renaissance.
It's a direct connection. As the city was about to fall, lots of Greek scholars fled. They went west to places like Florence and Italy, and they carried their books with them.
Ancient Greek texts, Plato, Aristotle, stuff that had been mostly lost in Western Europe during the Middle Ages.
And this sudden flood of ancient knowledge helped spark the Renaissance. It changed how people thought about art, about science, about everything. The fall of one city helped ignite a golden age in another.
Okay, so that's one massive consequence. What's the other?
The age of exploration. The Ottomans now controlled the old Silk Road, all the land routes to Asia.
So getting spices and sloop to Europe suddenly got way more expensive and difficult.
Right. And that economic pressure forced countries like Portugal and Spain to look for another way. They had to find a new route to Asia by sea.
A way to go around the Ottomans.
Exactly. And that search for a new sea route to get spices is what leads directly to Columbus, Vasco da Gama, and the discovery of the Americas. The fall of one city on the Bosphorus literally pushed the world's focus out of the Mediterranean and into the Atlantic Ocean.
It's just an amazing reminder that history can turn on a single moment. One siege, a combination of new technology and bold strategy, and it completely reshapes the world for the next 500 years.
It really shows you that understanding a battle isn't just about the fight itself. It's about all the consequences, intended or not, that ripple out afterwards.
See you next time.